The morning they kicked me out, my mother made pancakes. That's the detail I can never shake. The smell of butter and maple syrup drifting through the hallway while my father stood in my bedroom doorway with his arms crossed, telling me to be out by noon. Like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. My name is Emily Carter, and for 23 years, I lived as the invisible child in a house that, as it turned out, belonged to me all along. Let me paint you a picture. My brother Jason was the golden child, always had been. From the time he could walk, every smile at the dinner table was aimed at him. Every report card went on the fridge. Every baseball game had both parents in the bleachers. My sister Ashley came next, the baby, the sweet one, the one who could do no wrong simply by batting her eyelashes. And then there was me. I was the middle child, but not in the funny, relatable way people joke about. I was middle in the way furniture is middle. Present, functional, easy to ignore. My mother Linda had a way of looking through me when she talked to me, like she was speaking to the wall and I just happened to be in front of it. My father Robert was worse, in a different way. He paid attention to me, but only when something went wrong. And something was always going wrong. And it was always my fault. When Jason crashed Dad's truck at 17, he said I distracted him from the passenger seat. Dad believed him. When Ashley stole $40 from Mom's purse the summer I was 15, I found the money under my mattress the next morning. I still don't know if Ashley planted it on purpose or just panicked. Either way, I was grounded for a month. I learned early that in this house, truth didn't matter. What mattered was who told the story first. I'm not someone who gives up easily. That's either my greatest strength or the reason I stayed in that house far too long. I got good grades. I worked part-time at a grocery store through high school so I wouldn't have to ask my parents for spending money. I stayed out of trouble, kept my room clean, didn't complain. None of it moved the needle. Jason got a car for his 18th birthday. A used Honda, sure, but still. I got a card with $20 in it, and a suggestion that I start thinking about community college. Ashley got a shopping trip to Chicago for hers. Mom called it a bonding experience. I told myself it didn't bother me. That was a lie I was very good at telling myself. The summer after I turned 20, I started taking business classes at the local community college, while still working at the grocery store. I had ideas, vague, half-formed ones about starting something of my own someday. I didn't know what yet. I just knew I couldn't spend my whole life asking my family for permission to exist. That's when things at home got worse. My father had a bad year at work. Lost a big client, stress was through the roof, and suddenly every dinner table conversation was a minefield. Jason had moved out by then, moved in with a girlfriend across town. Convenient timing, and Ashley was finishing high school, which meant she was somehow even more the center of attention than usual. I was the only one left to absorb the pressure. Then one Tuesday morning in October, everything came apart. I came downstairs to find both my parents at the kitchen table, not eating, just sitting. My father had a folder in front of him. My mother had that look on her face, the one where she'd already made a decision and was just waiting to deliver it. "Sit down, Emily," Dad said. I sat. "We've been talking," Mom said, "and we think it's time for you to find your own place." I waited for the rest of the sentence, the part that made sense of it. It didn't come. "I'm sorry," I said. "You're 20 years old," Dad said. "Jason was out at 18. Ashley's going to her aunt's in Phoenix next year for school. This house has always been temporary for you kids." "You want me to move out?" I said slowly. "We think it's best." I looked around that kitchen. The yellow curtains my grandmother had sewn. The scuff on the baseboard from the time I dragged a box of books upstairs. The little pencil marks on the doorframe where every Carter kid had been measured every birthday. "Do you have somewhere you want me to go?" I asked. My voice was remarkably steady. I remember being proud of that. We can give you 2 weeks, Mom said. 2 weeks? Like a tenant. Like a stranger. Okay, I said. I stood up, pushed in my chair, and went back upstairs. I sat on my bed for a long time. Then I started packing. The first month, I slept in my car, a 2009 Civic with a broken heater and a passenger seat that didn't recline all the way. I parked in the lot behind the grocery store on nights I worked late so the security guy wouldn't hassle me. I used the staff bathroom to wash up in the mornings. I told no one. I couldn't afford the humiliation on top of everything else. By month 2, I had enough saved for a security deposit on a room in a house with 3 other people. 2 college students and a woman named Deb who worked nights at a call center and made excellent chili. It wasn't much, but it had heat. That winter, heat felt like everything. I worked double shifts. I dropped one of my college classes, just temporarily, I told myself, to take on more hours. I ate a lot of peanut butter. I cried in the car sometimes, in the parking lot before my shift, then fixed my face and went in. What I didn't do was call my parents. Not once. Not even when I had pneumonia in February and spent 4 days in a fog of fever on my half of a shared mattress, wondering if I was actually going to be okay. I was going to be okay. I decided that a lot in those months. I just kept deciding it until it became true. By spring, I'd gotten a small promotion. Shift supervisor. Nothing glamorous, but an extra $1.50 an hour and my own set of keys. I re-enrolled in my business class. I started reading everything I could find about small businesses, real estate, startups. I had no idea that somewhere across town, something was already waiting for me. It came 14 months after I moved out. An envelope, hand-addressed in shaky cursive, forwarded 3 times before it found its way to my little rented room. The return address was a law office downtown. My grandfather William had died. I knew that. I'd seen it on Facebook. Hadn't gone to the funeral. Hadn't been invited to the funeral. But what I didn't know was that my grandfather, who I'd always been a little closer to than the rest of my family, had left me something. Not money, exactly. A meeting. A very important meeting with his attorney. I almost didn't go. I sat with that letter for 3 days, turning it over in my hands. What could it mean? Grandpa William had always been kind to me, the only one in the family who ever said things like, "You're sharper than they give you credit for." But we hadn't been especially close. He'd lived in the same town as us my whole life, and I'd seen him at holidays. That was about it. I went to the meeting. The attorney, a calm woman named Patricia Chen, had me sit across from her mahogany desk and slid a manila folder across the surface. "Your grandfather," she said, "changed the deed on the family property 6 years ago." I stared at her. "He transferred primary ownership to you. As of 6 years ago, Emily, you've been the legal owner of your parents' house." I asked her to say it again. She did. She walked me through everything. The transfer documents, the legal filings, the notation that the change had been made quietly, with specific instructions not to tell my parents until after William's death. "He knew your situation," Patricia said carefully. "He believed you were treated unfairly. He wanted to give you something that couldn't be taken away." 6 years. For 6 years, my father had been mowing the lawn, my mother had been choosing new curtains, Jason had moved back in after his girlfriend dumped him, all on a property that legally belonged to me. I drove home to my rented room and sat very still for a very long time. Then I called a different lawyer. I didn't ambush them. I'm not that kind of person. I could have sent a certified letter. I could have shown up with a sheriff. Instead, I called my mother and asked if I could stop by. She sounded surprised, a little guilty maybe. "Of course," she said. "Come for dinner." I came for dinner. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just grown. Jason was there. He'd moved back in, sure enough, after the breakup. Ashley was visiting from Phoenix for the week. The whole family, together, as if the universe had arranged it. We made small talk through the meal. Mom asked about my job. Dad said something about the economy. Jason talked about a truck he was thinking about buying. After the dishes were cleared, I set the folder on the table. "I want to talk to you all about the house," I said.
Dad frowned. "What about the house?" "I had a meeting recently with Grandpa Williams' attorney," I said. "Turns out he made some changes to the property deed about 6 years ago." Mom tilted her head. "What kind of changes?" I slid the documents across the table. Nobody moved for a moment. Then Dad picked up the first page. His face went through about 5 different expressions in 10 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, something that looked almost like recognition, like some part of him had always been waiting for the floor to open up beneath him. "That's impossible," he said. His voice was flat. "It's not," I said. Mom grabbed the papers. Jason leaned over her shoulder. Ashley had gone very, very still. He didn't have the right to," Dad started. "He absolutely did," I said. "The property was in his name until the transfer. Patricia Chen can walk you through the details if you'd like. She's expecting your call." The kitchen that had never quite felt like mine went completely silent. For the first time in my life, I was the one at that table with all the cards. It started with denial. That took about 10 minutes. Then came anger, mostly from my father, who paced the kitchen like he was going to argue his way out of a legal document. He said things about family loyalty, about what Grandpa would have really wanted, about how I was being vindictive. I let him finish. Then came the part I'd been quietly dreading and quietly waiting for at the same time. My mother cried. Not the kind of crying that's manipulation, though my mother was capable of that, but something raw. She looked at me across the table and said, "We made mistakes, Emily. I know that." And I believed her. I believed she meant it in that moment. I also knew that moment didn't undo the others. Jason said nothing for a long time. Then, quietly, "So what happens now?" I could have given them 30 days. Legally, I had every right. I thought about it. I won't pretend I didn't. There were a few cold, crystalline minutes where I could see myself doing exactly that, handing over an eviction notice, watching them scramble. It would have felt like justice. Maybe it would have been. But I've spent my whole life trying not to become the worst version of the people who hurt me. So I gave them options. They could stay, under a formal lease agreement at fair market rent, managed through a property management company so I would never have to be their landlord personally. They could buy out my ownership interest if they could arrange financing. Grandpa had set a fair price in the documentation. Or they could have 12 months to make other arrangements, with no hard feelings and a clean break. My father looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "You're not throwing us out?" he said. "No," I said. "But I'm also not pretending anymore. This is a transaction now, not a family favor." It's been 2 years since that dinner. My parents signed the lease. They pay on time. We don't talk much, but when we do, it's different. Careful, a little formal, like two people who know exactly where the lines are. I used the first year's rent income to finally finish my business degree. I have a small consulting firm now. Nothing huge, but it's mine. Every piece of it. Sometimes I drive past that house and I feel something complicated. Not
triumph, exactly. Not grief, either. Something in between. The way scar tissue feels when the weather changes. My grandfather knew what he was doing when he signed those papers. He wasn't giving me a weapon. He was giving me a foundation. Something solid to stand on, after everyone else had tried to take the ground out from under me. The day my family threw me out with nothing, they thought they were writing the ending. They didn't know it was the first sentence. Standing in front of that house now, I understand something I couldn't have at 20, shaking and silent in the kitchen with my packed bags. The people who make you feel like nothing often do it because they're afraid of what you might become. They were right to be afraid. I became exactly that.